All right, welcome into Starting Nine here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. That way you will get all of our content, including Dono Daily here during the day, as well as everything we do at night. We'll do before floor tonight, before the Heat game at 6:30. Before floor is at 6:30. Post up 5R as soon as the game ends. Also, check out the latest episode of 5 on the Floor. We just went into whether or not the Heat would be better off with a 1 seed, playing for the 1 seed, or better off playing for seeding. Was a topic that was suggested to us from our off the floor feed. So make sure that you check that out as well. Sorry, I'm looking down because I want to make sure everybody's getting this particular episode. We are sponsored by our friends over at Signs Broward. Make sure you check them out. Signs Broward of Fort Lauderdale. It's pretty clear you have checked them out already if you live in Broward because you've seen their signs. Whether you've been on Federal Highway, whether you've been on Las Olas, you have seen their stuff, okay? Piazza, so many of the other restaurants down here, they use Signs Broward. Find out why. They're a one-stop shop for everything signs. They do the outdoor signs, the indoor signs. I mean, they do signs that you don't even know that they do signs for. That anybody does signs for. They also do the trade show displays. You can check out our friends over at everythingtradeshows.com too, because they use Signs Broward. And they do the vehicle graphics, okay? I don't know if they did the graphic of Will Manso on the side of a truck that I saw yesterday, but they do lots of other vehicle graphics, and they do the sign repair and maintenance. If you've got any issues, not with them, but with the weather down here, they will certainly take care of it. So go to Signs Broward, Fort Lauderdale. Check them out on Instagram as well. They're at that same place. And also at Signs Broward on Twitter. And you can check out all of their great work. Make sure you mention 5 Reasons. When you call, here's the phone number, 954-791-8685. 954-791-8685. All right. I mentioned 5 Reasons. Thanks to our producer, Maddie Chang, for being here this morning. Sorry I was a little bit late. What we're going to do today is we're going to take questions again. This went pretty well last week. I appreciate you guys, not just the support, but also the input. That's why, again, we recommend checking out our Off the Floor page, which I promote on 5 Reasons Twitter. But what we're going to get into as this new stretch of the season starts is we have talked about the Miami Heat season kind of in stretches, okay? There was sort of get through that opening gauntlet of teams. Remember that? Like they were playing all the teams we expected to be really good. Now, not all of them turned out to be great, but most of them were projected to be top 4 teams in their conferences. The Heat went through all of those early, right? Then there was the road stretch. Like they were almost never home. Like one long, 7-game trip was followed. They'd be home for 2 days. Then they have a 6-game trip, right? Like they were away all the damn time. And we kept just saying, just get through this stretch, get through this stretch. And there was the COVID period where some guys were out with COVID. Then there was obviously Kyle Lowry dealing with his personal reasons that he had, he was away from the team twice. There was Bam Adebayo, who was injured and ended up being out, I think, for 7 weeks. Okay, 7 or 8 weeks if you include when the actual injury happened instead of when the surgery happened. So almost 2 months. And it was just like, survive this, survive this, survive this. Put yourself in good position. Well, now you're here. And this is the whole thing about sports and when we get into kind of the macro issues and the micro issues. The Miami Heat are followed these days like they're an NFL team. This started during the Big 3 era. It did not happen before that. Now, part of that is Twitter, and part of that is this was the most scrutinized team in the world. Okay, Twitter came in 2009, LeBron, and really started to take off that next year. And really, the first huge Twitter moment in sports was LeBron's decision. So 2010. Okay. And so since then, the way that team was covered, the way that that team was defended by people in South Florida, since that moment, okay, this team has not been treated like a basketball team. It has been treated by its fans like a football team. Like every game is the end of the world. Okay. Now that's when the Heat have a good team. I mean, when the Heat don't have a good team, it's not as much, right? Like it was kind of like the 30-11 run that happened, during the Dion, the 7-11 period there. Like it was not a live or die situation because you didn't expect that team to do anything. They were 11-30. But the good teams, okay, the 15-16 team, the team 2 years ago, this team, like they are treated like they are football teams. And so we get lost. It's like the forest for the trees situation. We get lost in the minutia. We're like, okay, well, maybe if Spoelstra had done this down the stretch of a game, or maybe if Jimmy hadn't shot this step back, or maybe if Bam was more aggressive in this situation, or maybe Hero didn't have a bad 2 weeks, or maybe that's correct. I remember Cavs fans throwing battery at LeBron when the Big 3 went to Cleveland. I remember because I was there and I was hiding. I I've told this story before, and I'll pivot back to this. Thanks for the comment, Alex. That I got to Cleveland a couple days early to write a story about how Cleveland fans were handling this. And every bar I went to, when you went to piss, in the urinals, you were pissing on LeBron's face because basically they had like urinal cakes with his open mouth right there. And they had contests for this is where he went back to, seriously. They had contests, for who could tell the best LeBron joke, and you would get a 25-cent shot. Okay. That may be the actual price in Cleveland typically, but I didn't know any better at the time. But going back to where we are now, there's the macro and there's the micro. So we have been like obsessed because we do a podcast every day and we do stuff on the YouTube channel with the micro. Okay. How is Spoelstra going to handle this rotation situation, right? Is Kyle Lowry going to shoot more? But in the macro, if you were to just say that you got through all of these stretches, right? Crazy amount of games against contenders, crazy amount of games on the road, right? Crazy amount of games without Jimmy, without Kyle, without Bam, right? If you were to say all of that, Markieff Morris out for 4 months, and you were to say right now, you would have a 2.5 game lead in the Eastern Conference. 2.5 game lead over both Philadelphia and Milwaukee. Actually, I think Philadelphia is 3 back now. You would be clear of all of them. You would be way up, on the Brooklyn Nets, who are still the betting favorite to win the championship in Vegas, or at least out of the East. You would take it, right? Like you would take it. Like you could not be better positioned right now. Like this team was not going to win 60 games. It wasn't, we never said that before the year. Like I said low 50s. Where are they headed? Low 50s. They are basically a built for the playoffs type team. That's what we said. And so the fact is, if you could get to 51, 52, 53 regular season wins. Now, I thought, and others thought, that teams like Milwaukee might end up closer to 60. And if that was the case, then getting to 51, 52 wins would probably net you a 3 seed. That looked about right to me. 3, maybe 4, well-positioned for the playoffs, playoff type team. You're the one. Like, what's the worst case scenario now? Knock on something, okay? How far is this team going to fall with their schedule? They're playing Detroit. They're playing Oklahoma City. They've got some soft games coming up. And yes, they need a W tonight, and they likely get it. Although I will say this, okay? Young teams give the Heat problems for a short period of time at least, and the Pistons are playing better. They are playing better. They lost a close one the other night. They've been winning some close games lately. Kid's pretty good. They're getting there. And we'll get to more of the comments here in a second. But I just wanted to make this point today because, I think that we have to take into perspective what they have accomplished to this point. It's really significant. And it does give them the flexibility to make decisions. And that's why I would recommend you listen to 5 on the Floor last night, because Greg said he's spoken to many in the organization who said their priority is the number 1 seed. Now, I don't think it's at the expense of everything. I don't think it's at the expense of some rest for some of their guys and their health. I don't think it's like what Indiana, remember Indiana during the Big 3 era, like that was their goal, get the number 1 seed. They didn't know what to do after that. But that was their goal. Okay. Get the number 1. And they couldn't do anything with that home court advantage once they got it. But that was the thing. Vogel wanted the number 1. Spo didn't really care so much. LeBron used to act like he cared about the number 1 seed until he knew he couldn't get it. And then it was like, well, I can be seated anywhere. And the reality was, during the Big 3, that was pretty much true. I mean, they were seated. They were only seated number 1, I think, once of the 4 years. And they made it to the finals 4 times. Now, this team, as we talked about last night, can benefit more from a number 1 than that team could, because this team is not, let's just be straight, this team is not as good as the 2012-2013 Heat. Very few teams in history are. This is a very good team. I think we're going to have a conversation at the end of this regular season, like where this one ranks, and I think that it is ahead of some of the others because of some of the circumstances that they went through. I think it's ahead of some teams that actually won more games than it won. But they can benefit from a number 1 seed. I just don't think it's all or nothing for number 1. But I also don't think, and I think this is where fans have it wrong a little bit, I also don't think that they are afraid of the team they might face in the 8. Would they prefer not to play Kevin Durant? I mean, anybody would prefer not to play Kevin Durant. Okay. And I think anybody would prefer not to deal with the New York circus and everything else that goes on there. Would you prefer it like a nice sleepy series against Charlotte or Atlanta, Toronto, maybe? Yes. Okay. Toronto, there would be some emotions with Lowry. Atlanta, Chicago, Atlanta, Charlotte, sure. But, okay, I don't think they're afraid of anybody. So I think they're kind of in that place where they're like, okay, we got a little bit of house money here. We're better than we thought we would be. Or better position. Not better than they thought they would be. They're better position than they thought they would be. And now we roll with it and we see where it goes. And I just think fans should take a pause this morning to kind of recognize, all right, there are issues they need to work out, the late game stuff, some rotation stuff, Lowry's aggressiveness, Bam's aggressiveness, Jimmy's shooting. But some of the things that were not working well early in the season are starting to work. Duncan Robinson's a 40% three-point shooter basically for 2.5 months. I mean, you would have taken that before the year. And then you add into that the unexpected surprises from Caleb Martin, who we were talking about. Maybe he's a back end of the rotation player, maybe in spots. And now we're like, he's a guy you can't take out of the rotation in the playoffs. Or Tyler Hero, who was likely, and I reported this, going to get traded. And now he's in a situation where he is or should be a unanimous sixth man of the year. Things have worked out pretty well. So as we look forward, as we take these questions, try to keep that in mind. All right, we're going to tell you about one more sponsor here of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. It's prizepicks.com. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. You get your initial deposit match. You put down $100. You'll get $100 to play with. You don't need to play it all at once. You can play the flex play, the power play. You can play any kind of play there over at prizepicks.com. That's why they're officially fantasy partner. They are the easiest. We worked with some others, and I can tell you that this is the one, okay? This is why we keep coming back to them. They just it's just a very simple platform, okay? They update things regularly. It's not like you need to know a whole bunch of rules or anything like that. It's just a cool place to play and make the games more enjoyable. Some of our folks have hit on 5 for 5s and made a lot of money. And the thing is, again, you have a lot of flexibility about how far you want to take it, like how much you want to push. So go to prizepicks.com. Use the code 5. All right. I'm going to take some questions here. We'll get to one more sponsor towards the end or comments. Let's get to them, Manny. Let's line them up. And again, we mentioned we if you use Super Chat, I'll definitely read them. But at this point, why not? Is the front office more likely to work with Clutch nowadays? I don't think there's any evidence of that. I don't know that they stayed away from Tyrese Maxey just because he's Clutch, but I don't think it helped. It's interesting. Pat told me a few years ago that his job had kind of morphed into dealing with agents. Okay. But there are certain agents that they tend to want to deal with over and over again. Bartelstein, Duffy, for some obvious reasons. There's just certain agents that keep popping up. Obviously, they have a relationship with CAA because they had one with Leon Rose, but also they had one with the late Henry Thomas because he had 3 of the most prominent clients in Heat history, Bosch, Hardaway, and Wade. But you don't hear about Clutch guys. You just don't. And even you look at a Tristan Thompson. I heard there was some mild interest there. I think if they had to make it right, I think for the right guy, they would. But I think if you're talking about can occasionally be a tiebreaker between this player and that player, do I really want to deal with Rich? The funny thing about Rich is he doesn't do the contracts for Clutch, or at least he didn't. But I just think it's the whole power thing that they just don't want to deal with. So I wouldn't say they wouldn't, but I don't think they're running to do it. And I think the evidence is there are no Clutch players on the team right now. Alex, which one of the play-in teams are predicted to face the Heat? Well, here's the thing about that, okay? I don't think if the Heat are, I don't think they're going to play the Nets. Okay. Because if you know how the play-in rules work, it's 7 versus 8 to start, right? So the Nets can be 7 or they can be 8. Now, if the Nets are 7, let's say Toronto or Cleveland is the 8. If the Nets are 7 and they don't change the rule in New York, then Kyrie's not playing in that game. Okay. So that does create a better chance of the Nets falling to 8. And maybe the Nets would want to fall to 8 because they'd prefer to play the Heat than the Bucks or the Sixers in the first round, even though they're 0-3 against them. That is possible, right? But here's the problem with that. It runs the risk of being knocked out entirely because if you lose the 7 versus 8, you have to play the winner of 9 versus 10. And here's the thing about that. You would be the home team in that too, so you wouldn't have Kyrie either. if he didn't have him in the other game. So could you lose a one-game situation to Trae Young? Maybe not LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges, but could you lose one to Trae Young and John Collins potentially in an 8-9 matchup if Atlanta comes out of the 9-10 situation? If you don't have Kyrie, it's possible. Do the Nets want to take that chance? I'm not sure. So to me, it's fluid. Everybody's assuming 1-8. It's not that simple anymore. They could play the Nets or they could play somebody else there. Neil, this comes in. Neil CP. What concerns me is the offense of our starting lineup. Lowry needs to score more, especially in the playoffs. I thought it was encouraging the other night that he said he was getting himself ready for the real season, because I have not really been sure this year whether Kyle Lowry is not shooting because it's a choice or because he can't get to certain spots he used to get to. And so when he's had these flourishes where he has shot the ball a lot, and I want to say before the year, I predicted 12 to 13 points a game for him, and that's where he's at. So like, it's not like he's gone under my expectation. I thought that he would be a little bit more passive in this situation and be more of a creator for others. I have concerns at times when it seems like he gets to spots in the paint and doesn't want to go. I would rather him do that than sort of turn around and look to see who he can pass to every single time. I think it's in him. I think the Heat fans who are expecting him to take over a series are expecting too much, but I think there will be games where he is more aggressive, and I think he needs to be. I mean, we talked about this 2 episodes ago of 5 on the Floor. Who are the guys who can raise their level of game? And look, I think it's Jimmy and Kyle that we've been expecting to do that when the postseason hits. And if they don't, then the Bam hero leaps need to be even greater than they've been so far. At least they need to be sustained. Anything else? All right, Sean, in order to make it out of the East, we have to be the best defense and ball movement team in the league. I agree with that. I think the one advantage they've had over Milwaukee this year in particular, we know they have an advantage over Brooklyn as a defense, no question. The one advantage they've had over Milwaukee this year is they've been better defensively than Milwaukee. Milwaukee has still scored the ball, but the problem for Milwaukee has been no Brook Lopez. They don't have an anchor in the middle of that defense. They've gotten him back. Now we'll see how fluid he can be by the time the playoffs start, but you don't nearly need Brook to do a lot to help. He was always slow. So, it's okay if he's still slow. The issue with Brook is, he provides a paint defender that gives Bam problems. And I think that the jump they're going to take defensively is what would worry me most as a Heat observer. More so than the Harden fraud in Philadelphia or, what are they going to do? Just shoot 6,000 free throws in the playoffs? I don't see it. Or the Nets situation, which is so fluid. Or Chicago, what I don't believe in. Let's go to Ray. Did Jimmy comment anything about his wrist or shooting mechanics? He will not talk about that. We have tried. I have tried with people around him. He will not take the excuse. I believe, based on a lot of conversations I've had with people in Philadelphia and around, that wrist surgery didn't go 100% right, and he's been affected by it ever since. If you watch his shot, when he gets lift with his legs, it tends to go in. All right. And there have been people around him who've joked that he needs to pretend there's somebody 7 feet tall in front of him. And there are others who say it's just a confidence thing with him. And when he gets in a rhythm, he gets in a rhythm. This is obviously too long a slump from outside of, say, 12 feet for this to just be random. It's not. This is kind of who he is now. Whether it's wrist, whether it's confidence, whether it's lift, it's not entirely clear, but it's something. There was another comment that came in here, Manny. And then I'm going to go to one more ad, and then we'll finish it up with a spree of them. I think it was the one before. Oh, here we go. Wasn't this one, but I'll take it. Clark, what's the reason that Jimmy Butler hesitates so much and refuses to take mid-range jumpers off picks when the defense gives him space for it? Well, I think it's the things we just talked about, but I think that one honestly is confidence. And it's crazy to say that Jimmy Butler lacks confidence. But I just think in this particular part of his game, I do think there is some doubt. But this is the same problem, honestly, that Bam and Kyle have. There are situations where they have space to take a shot, and they would prefer to look for the better shot. And that does build team camaraderie and morale. PJ Tucker's talked about it, the way that they move the ball. But they give up points every single game, I believe, still, because they are too unselfish. In Jimmy's case with that, I think a little of that, at least at the little of that, is a result of him not being confident. I'm going to get to some of the rest of the comments here in a second. So, Manny, keep them up. We'll go through the next 5 that I get. Before I do want to tell you about U-Brake Wheel Fix. Okay, U-Brake Wheel Fix has come back with us as a sponsor. They are based here in South Florida, right there in North Miami. They can handle the big three for you: the wheel repair, refinish, and okay, they can do the custom wheels for you as well. All right, so they got everything for you at ubrakewheelfix.com. They're based right off of Biscayne in Northeast 146th Street. They do incredible work. If you check out their IG page, you will see all of it. Say hi to Mark and his entire team down there. Okay, they are literally changing the way that you see wheels. All right, so check them out. It's a total automotive wheel solution. Again, North Miami, just off of Biscayne and Northeast 146th Street. You can call it 305-748-0112. That's 305-748-0112. Schedule an appointment. Mention 5 reasons. You'll get a discount. We tell you guys that all the time. Go to ubrakewheelfix.com or ubrakewheelfix on Instagram. All right, let's line them up. Let's take the next 5 rapid fire here. If we got 5, you still want to talk to me. Here we go. Alan, Boston's defense will be a problem for already challenged offense. I agree with that. We've seen it twice. I think there are some situations this year that have been a little flukish, like the 2 losses to Cleveland when Miami didn't have Bam and Jimmy. I think the Boston losses were a little more concerning. Teams playing at a high level. They play a little like the Heat used to play. They don't have a true point guard, but they have the wings that handle all the time. They got 2 guys who can go off. I think Miami can exploit their lack of a point guard. Kyle Lowry had a big series against Boston 2 years ago with Toronto, and he got what he wanted to against Marcus Smart. I think he maybe can again. I think Miami has enough options to make it to make things difficult on Boston also. But Horford's been good. I'm not going to disparage the Celtics. To me, they're a bigger threat than Philly or the Nets. But that's just me. All right, throw up that next comment. The Heat will go as far as Bam goes. I said that before the season. I still lean that way. The Tyler leap has changed my mind a little bit. Tyler's their 3-level scorer. There are certain times you just need to go with it. But yes, I think Bam has the highest variance of all their players. Ray, will the Heat be more likely to move Jimmy or Tyler if it's a failed postseason? I can tell you this right now. The Heat are not moving Jimmy Butler. And it's as much about optics as anything else. That he saved the franchise to a large degree. I mean, they were waiting for somebody to come and say they wanted to be here. He did it. I cannot see a scenario where they trade Jimmy Butler unless things have gone really badly and it's the last year of his contract and somebody wants it. By the way, I don't think a lot of teams are going to want that contract. That was a very specific to Miami situation. So if you're asking who's more likely, it's Tyler. Tyler only goes for a top 10 to 15 player in the league at this point. That would be it. Neil, I hate the idea when everybody's back and Duncan is doing his cardio on the court while Strus is sitting on the bench. All right. I know we're going to get back to this one. I think Strus is viewed as a situational player. I know that the eye test doesn't show it, but the metrics with Duncan defensively are better than the metrics with Strus defensively. Also, Duncan and Bam have a symbiotic relationship where it is beneficial in the first few minutes of each half. I have said, and I'll stick to this, if Duncan doesn't have it going, you should go to Strus rather than give Duncan that second set of each half. But they're going to continue to start Duncan Robinson. All right, I got time for one more. If there is one more, hit that like and subscribe button. Tyler, Bam, and Kyle will each win us a couple of playoff games. I hope you're right, Jordan. I believe it's pronounced Jordan because we want a long run here on the YouTube channel. And I think you're probably right. And I think there's probably guys in there that you haven't mentioned that may do that as well. So we'll see how that plays out. All right, thanks, everybody, for following. I'll be back tomorrow. We may do Dolphins tomorrow. We're going to see how things play out today. Thanks to our sponsors, Signs Broward, U-Brake Wheel Fix, and PrizePicks.com.